Imagine a time when your morning commute involved a shot of whiskey, and children's cough syrup was, well, mostly whiskey. A time not so long ago when America wasn't just a nation that drank alcohol, but a nation that, in many ways, ran on it. We're talking about a period in American history that's often glossed over, a hidden chapter where alcohol wasn't just a social lubricant, but an intrinsic part of daily life, medicine, and even currency. What if I told you that long before Prohibition, the very fabric of American society was soaked in spirits in ways that would shock and astound you today? How did this profoundly alcoholic America come to be, and what secrets does it still hold? To truly grasp this almost unbelievable reality, we need to peel back the layers of history all the way to the colonial era. The first European settlers arriving on American shores brought with them not just their hopes and dreams, but also their drinking habits, and a very good reason for them. Travel was long and arduous. Water stored in casks during transatlantic voyages often became stagnant, foul, and a breeding ground for disease. Alcohol, on the other hand, was a stable, palatable, and crucially safer alternative. Think about it. A pint of beer or cider was often less risky than a glass of dubious well water. This pragmatism quickly evolved into a deeply ingrained culture. Brewing and distilling were among the earliest industries established in the colonies. Farmers grew grains not just for food, but for beer and whiskey. Apples were cultivated for cider. Every household, it seemed, had a brewing kettle or a still. Alcohol was not a luxury. It was a fundamental provision, a core component of daily sustenance. Children drank watered-down cider or beer because it was safer than the water. Laborers were often paid, in part, with spirits, a practice that cemented alcohol's place in the burgeoning economy. The sheer volume consumed by even seemingly moderate individuals would stagger a modern observer, leading to a society where the line between refreshment and inebriation was often blurred or non-existent. But the story deepens drastically. This wasn't merely about daily consumption. Alcohol was woven into the very infrastructure of colonial life. Consider this. Doctors of the era prescribed alcohol for practically every ailment imaginable, from snake bites to indigestion, from cholera to childbirth. A common cold, whiskey, a fever, brandy. It was considered a pain reliever, an antiseptic, and a general panacea. Sermons were often followed by drinks, and community gatherings were unthinkable without ample supplies of spirits. When towns needed to raise money for public works, such as building a school or repairing a bridge, they didn't just levy taxes. They often held vendues or auctions where the proceeds of alcohol sales funded these crucial projects. It wasn't uncommon for towns to own and operate their own public distilleries as a source of revenue, essentially making the government complicit in and even reliant on alcohol production. This wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. Political rallies, especially in the early republic, were infamous for their free-flowing alcohol. Candidates would ply potential voters with rum and whiskey, recognizing that a well-lubricated electorate was a more amenable one. George Washington himself, the father of our nation, was one of the largest distillers of whiskey in America. His Mount Vernon distillery was incredibly profitable, producing thousands of gallons annually. This isn't just a footnote, it's a testament to how deeply ingrained this industry was, touching every aspect of American ambition, governance, and daily sustenance. This wasn't just drinking, it was a cultural foundation, an unspoken agreement that to build a nation, you needed to build it with spirits, blurring the lines between necessity, commerce, and pleasure in ways we can barely comprehend today. The military, too, relied heavily on alcohol. Soldiers were routinely allotted rations of rum or whiskey, believed to provide courage, warmth, and relief from the hardships of campaigning. It was seen as an essential morale booster, a vital component of a soldier's kit, from the Revolutionary War through the War of 1812. The idea of a dry army was simply ludicrous. Taverns and public houses were more than just places to drink. They were community centers, post offices, courthouses, and often makeshift polling stations. They were the nerve centers of colonial and early American society, fostering communication, commerce, and political discourse, all conducted over copious amounts of alcohol. The notion of dry socializing was virtually unheard of. This pervasive presence meant that social control, or lack thereof, around alcohol was an entirely different beast. What we consider excessive today was, for many, simply a Tuesday. The stage was set for an era of almost unimaginable consumption, a national embrace of spirits that would eventually reach its staggering peak. And then, the true scale of this liquid empire becomes starkly clear. By the early 19th century, specifically the 1820s and 1830s, alcohol consumption in America reached its terrifying zenith. Historians estimate that the average American adult, over 15 years old, consumed astonishing amounts, somewhere in the range of 7.1 gallons of pure alcohol per year. To put that into perspective, that's roughly 3 times what the average American adult drinks today. This wasn't just beer and wine. A significant portion of this was hard liquor, whiskey, rum, and brandy. Imagine the equivalent of someone drinking almost a fifth of whiskey every week. These were not just isolated cases. This was a societal norm for a generation. The consequences, as you might expect, were profound and widespread. Alcoholism and its devastating effects on families, health, and productivity became a national crisis. Workplaces were rife with intoxicated laborers, leading to accidents and inefficiencies. Social order was often strained. This era birthed the first significant social reform movement in American history, the temperance movement. Preachers, doctors, and concerned citizens began to speak out against the widespread drunkenness, cataloging the social decay and human suffering caused by this unchecked consumption. They initially advocated for moderation, but as the problem persisted, their calls grew louder, demanding total abstinence. They told stories of families ruined, fortunes squandered, and lives lost, painting a grim picture of an America drowning in its own spirits. Their campaigns, using powerful moral appeals and dramatic depictions of drunkenness, started to chip away at the deeply entrenched culture. This was a direct reaction to the unimaginable quantities of alcohol being consumed, a societal reckoning with the very foundation it had inadvertently built, a foundation now threatening to crumble under its own weight. The sheer scale of the problem demanded a response, sparking a cultural battle that would rage for decades, culminating almost a century later in Prohibition. But for a significant period, America simply lived, worked, and governed itself through a hazy, alcohol-soaked lens, unaware of the impending storm that would force it to confront its deepest desires. So, what does this forgotten, alcohol-fueled chapter of American history tell us? It reveals a nation forged in a crucible of necessity, where practical needs led to deeply ingrained habits that lasted for centuries. It showcases how quickly a utility can become a cultural cornerstone, and how societal norms can shift dramatically over time. The legacy of this era is undeniable. The temperance movement, born from this period of intense drinking, ultimately led to Prohibition, a grand social experiment that profoundly reshaped the legal and moral landscape of the country, though it ultimately failed. Even today, the echoes of this past resonate in our sometimes contradictory relationship with alcohol, the ongoing debates about its place in society, and the lingering legal frameworks that were born from those heady, drunken days. This wasn't just a period where people drank a lot, it was a time when alcohol shaped labor, medicine, politics, and social interaction in ways we are still unpacking. Perhaps the most unsettling truth is that for a long time, America truly did run on alcohol, and the remnants of that operation are still visible if you know where to look. To this day, we may never fully comprehend the extent to which our nation's foundations were laid by hands that might have been, on any given day, more than a little tipsy. If you want more untold stories of America's past, hit subscribe and join us next time as we explore another hidden truth.